Thank you for joining us, and welcome to our webinar, Enabling Real-Time Access to Big Data, hosted by Aberdeen Group and sponsored by Terracotta. Aberdeen's latest research into big data trends has identified in-memory technology as a key contributor to best-in-class success. This webinar will share Aberdeen's findings on how companies are using in-memory in their big data strategies and the resulting performance increases in processing data at a large scale and high speed. Our presenters for today's webinar are Nathaniel Rowe, the research analyst of the business intelligence practice at Aberdeen Group. His practice focuses on the rapidly growing volume of business data and the best-in-class practices for the creation, capture, management, and analysis of this information. His research topics cover everything from physical documents, unstructured data, master data records, and the ever big data problem facing modern companies today. And Gagan Mehra is the chief evangelist at Terracotta. He has over 15 years of experience creating and implementing digital strategies for leading technology companies on 6 continents. His area of expertise includes business and IT transformation, enterprise architecture, e-commerce, and high traffic, 1 billion users of web businesses. And prior to joining Terracotta, Gagan was a leader with Deloitte's consulting digital practice, where he led web-based products for clients like Adobe, Agilent, Expedia, HP, McAfee, Seagate, Walmart, amongst others. Thank you both of you for your participation today. Nathaniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy day to join us here. I want to take the time to talk about real-time access to big data, and in doing so I want to present some findings from Aberdeen's latest research study. It was conducted in December 2012 and carried over into the first part of this month, January 13. But before I get too far into the data points, I wanted to just spend a couple minutes talking about the research methodology, Aberdeen's basic maturity class framework. So Aberdeen's framework starts with sending a survey out to hundreds or even thousands of companies worldwide in every industry. And when these companies take the survey, they're asked to rate their company's current performance in a number of key business metrics. Now, when we're talking about data management, some of the key metrics measured are how quickly can you integrate new sources of information and plug them into your architecture, how accurate, complete, reliable is the information that you're using, and how quickly are you able to search, access this information, and deliver it to the key business users on time. Now, since we're talking about big data, we added a further filter. We only looked at organizations that had at least 5 terabytes of active data or above. These are the kind of a basic benchmark of big data. And so we had 125 organizations that met this criteria, and each one was rated individually, how their company performed in these metrics. The next step Aberdeen takes is to divide these companies out into 3 categories. The top 20%, the people or the companies that had performed the best, we call the best-in-class companies. Middle 50% we call the industry average, and the bottom 30% we call the laggards. Now, this not only gives us a basic barometer of success, what does a best-in-class company look like, what's an average, industry average company struggling with today, but it allows us to compare these groups with each other. We can look at the best-in-class companies and say, what are they doing that other companies aren't? What is enabling their success? And we can look at the laggards and say, well, what are they doing that other companies are not? That might be a practice to avoid or something that's not working, a potential stumbling block. So we'll be talking about these maturity class frameworks, the best-in-class and the laggards in more detail in the rest of the presentation. But let's get on to some of the first data points. Now, big data is a pressure that's been growing in a lot of people's minds. It's been impacting a lot of companies. It's one of the hottest marketing buzzwords of 2012 and moving into this year. And so in order just to give a basic definition of what big data is, I'll talk about the 3 V's. It's probably the most popular and commonly known definition of big data. It deals with the volume of data, the velocity of data, and the variety of data. Volume is just simply the amount of information you have to capture and store. Velocity is how quickly you have to access it, analyze it, and deliver it. And variety is can you tap into not just the structured information in a relational database, but can you use semi-structured information or unstructured data, documents, and rich media, and the like, and use that to analyze and gain insight. Now, there's other analyst firms and other companies that add on to the 3 V's, adding a C for complexity or veracity. But if I was going to add on to the big data definition at all, I'd focus on value, because in addition to the kind of hardcore techie aspects of just dealing with the data, it's important for companies to keep in mind what the end goal is. What do you want to get out of this? And so identifying the business value that big data can add to your organization is a crucial step and something that people have to keep in mind throughout the entire big data initiative. So as you can see, when we ask companies what were the pressures they were facing, what was driving their investment in improving their data architecture or implementing a big data initiative, those V's you start seeing develop here. The most popular response was, hey, the reason we're investing is the volume of data is growing too rapidly. This is no surprise. To kind of support this, Aberdeen's research also shows that an average company is seeing a 56% growth rate in the amount of data they're storing every year. So in other words, every 18 to 19 months, the amount of data an organization stores doubles. And that's complicated because if you're doubling that amount of data, everything supporting and associated with that is doubling too. The amount of storage space you need, the power, the cooling costs, the space, the headcount, the IT folks that you need to manage and support and service all this equipment and all this data, that's growing too. So that's top of mind for most organizations. As you can see, not getting information fast enough is the second most popular response to big data pressures. And this speaks to the velocity. This is not just decision makers getting reports and analysis of the information, but your end users. How much time are they spending searching for the information? Is it hindering them in their day-to-day tasks? And finally, business decisions. This is the kind of end result of a big data initiative. You want to be able to analyze lots of it, get interesting insight, and submit it to those decision makers. But if you're not doing it correctly, if you're not doing fast enough, and the data is unreliable and of poor quality, that's going to have a negative impact on decisions. And so these were the primary reasons organizations were looking into big data in the first place or looking to improve what they already had. But if we take the analysis one step further, we can see how these business pressures divide out depending on whether an organization was best in class or a laggard. And there's a very stark split here. We can see that the best-in-class companies are very concerned with data volume. And if we dig a little deeper, we understand why. Best-in-class companies are, on average, analyzing twice the amount of data that laggards have. The average number is around 250 terabytes of active data that at some point or another they're trying to analyze at any given moment. But they're not as concerned with the impact of data quality on business decisions or getting the information fast enough. And as an analyst, when I look at this graph, I scratch my head a little bit and ask why. The best-in-class have more data, a more pressing business challenge when it comes to data, but they're delivering it quickly. They're having accurate information and accurate decisions based on this. And so I ask why. And so looking at some of the enabling technology and the capabilities, one of the elements that stuck out the most was the use of in-memory technology. And you can see here that there's a very stark contrast. About 2 out of every 5, 38% of the best-in-class had this technology implemented, adopted, influencing their business activities, whereas in this particular survey, not a single one of the laggards had this technology in place right now. And so that's a very strong correlation between this technology and accessing large amounts of data very quickly, meeting those kind of business pressures we talked about. Now, just to define in-memory very briefly, it's all about storing large blocks of data directly in the random access memory of a server. This eliminates a lot of the kind of bottlenecks or roadblocks in terms of accessing data quickly. You don't have to spin up a disk. You don't have to find the right file. You're not hampered by perhaps non-optimized software or old hardware or even network bandwidth speeds if you're transferring data from a storage array into a data warehouse or a server that's going to do the processing. It's right there. And since RAM is getting cheaper every day and new servers have enough RAM for hundreds of gigabytes or even terabytes of information, it's become a much more practical and easy-to-use technology, and so we're seeing a lot of developments in this space. So we know the best-in-class are succeeding and not as troubled by the problems of delivering information quickly. We see that in-memory is one of those best-in-class practices. And so looking, how is this impacting their business? How is it impacting their operations? We can see, again, they have more data, twice as much as laggards. It's growing at a much faster rate, so their data problem is more pressing. For them, it's doubling every year. It's 100% growth year over year. And more importantly, their demand for data access is much greater. oftentimes it's not necessarily about how quickly a company can access the data, it's can you access it quickly enough. For some companies, it might be fine to get information within a day of an event or within an hour. But we could see that the best-in-class companies, 46%, almost half of them, wanted real-time access to this information. Laggards, on the other hand, much less likely to have that stringent data demand. They were the ones, it's okay, in an hour, in a day, it's all right. But even for the best-in-class, with that really strict data demand, we want real-time access, they were able to meet that demand 92% of the time. Over 9 out of 10 times when an executive said, we need this information now, we need to act on it, I need to know why this is happening, they were able to meet that. Makes the company more agile. It gives them better insight into their operations. Laggards, 48% of the time they could meet it, even though their demand window was so much larger. In fact, in the analysis on in-memory computing from last year, December 2011 to January 2012, we looked at companies that had adopted in-memory computing and those that had not, and we found that those with the technology were processing the same amount of information over 100 times faster. So that shows you a greater illustration of the kind of practical power of this technology. But again, I spoke about value as being an important part of big data. So it's not just about the bits and bytes and how quickly you can analyze information. It's how you can draw that into the business world. It's a little hard to find some common metrics when you survey organizations around the world in all sorts of industries. But stuff around time and business decisions is very universal. So we look at those best-in-class companies with, who are much more likely to have in-memory tools, and we find that the time spent searching for data was reduced by 27% in the last year. So you're talking about your employees who are looking up records, trying to find information, whether it's phone numbers, contact information, pricing orders, and that's reduced by almost a third. That frees up a lot of time, a lot of man hours. You can be a lot more productive with the time that you're given. And since you're spending less time searching for the information, all those data-centric processes that kind of run the business, whether it's processing mortgages or loans or sales orders, or whether it's dealing with customer complaints or developing sales or marketing campaigns, those processes are streamlined, 16% less time year over year. And then when the information is delivered, it's of higher quality, it's more relevant to the business activity, the business units, and so the business decisions are improving. The accuracy was improved for these best-in-class companies by 31%. Laggards, complete reverse. When they're taking more time to find the information, they're kind of getting snowed under by this volume of data, and as a result, their whole operations are becoming more sluggish. It's harder for them to change. They're reducing the quality of their analysis and seeing that the accuracy of their decisions is worsening, not the right direction to be going. So obviously, in-memory technology, according to our research, is a very strong part of a best-in-class strategy when it comes to using big data. But I do want to stress that there is no single silver bullet to slay the big data beast. No one technology, even in-memory computing, is going to solve all your woes. And so Aberdeen tries to take a holistic view and look at some of the other business enablers, the capabilities, the organization, the management processes that lay behind the scenes and contribute to best-in-class success. And so one of the ways to look at this is, well, what is preventing companies from meeting their goals when it comes to data and big data specifically? And we can see that for most companies, the most popular answer was, hey, we just don't have senior management support for this. And this is a big one. If you don't have senior management support, you don't get funding, you don't get project approval, things are dead before they even get out of the starting gate. And there's a couple ways that this factors in. For a lot of organizations, it's because senior management doesn't always understand the value of data or what a big data initiative is or what it could do for a company. And that lack of understanding is a big roadblock, and that just takes education, it takes determination. And the flip side of this is sometimes, even if they understand the value, they just don't have the means. To be perfectly honest, the economy is still depressed in most areas. The U.S. just saw, the economy shrunk for the first time since 2009 in the last quarter, kind of sobering realization that as much as companies might want to tackle the problem, they might not be able to just based on budget. And we see this impact of lack of resources and concern about money in the other major obstacles companies are facing. IT is being stretched and strained. Some of that's the data volume and explosion. It's been doubling. Maybe the money hasn't been doubling. And so IT is trying to do more with less, and tackling additional projects is just out of the realm of possibility. And companies are very often daunted when it comes to software, services, and hardware and the price tag that's associated with it when you're talking about big data scale. This is particularly apropos when it comes to in-memory, because a lot of the major marketing campaigns, a lot of the major solutions that are touting big or in-memory as part of their solution are aimed almost exclusively at the billion-dollar top-tier enterprise-level companies, and they're a very good fit for that. But they might be out of the budget for a mid-sized enterprise or an SMB. This isn't to say there aren't solutions out there. There are, but the impression is often that it's too expensive for me. I'm not even going to try. So I'd encourage companies facing these particular obstacles to broaden your search and look at other options, because there are some out there. So knowing that these are the obstacles facing a lot of companies, we can go back to our maturity class framework and say, let's look at those best in class. How are they avoiding these problems? Sometimes it's as simple as having that senior management support, having somebody who understands the value, an executive champion who will drive the data management initiatives forward, who will fight for resources against other projects and really push things through, because they understand how big data can help you understand your own operations, help you understand your customers, and really bring value. Another interesting aspect of using big data is taking some of the load off IT's shoulders and instead enabling the line of business. And I put interactive dashboards here as one such example, as a really good illustration, because traditionally when when line of business had a new request for data, they wanted to look at a new type of data or a new data source or look at data in a different way, they submitted a request to IT, and they'd have to go and do a data integration task, pull it into the warehouse, rebuild the cube. It would take some weeks or months before the information was finally available. And when you get requests from multiple business units and data is growing, it's often more than IT can handle, so you're not getting that information to the line of business. But when you have tools like interactive dashboards or visualization or exploration tools, and you train up the line of business in those tools, they can explore the data themselves, and it takes that pressure off IT. They can look at sales charts and say, well, why are sales down in this region? Let's look at it by county. Let's look at it by store and find the problem areas, and maybe even drill down to such a granular level that you can look at, well, these are the stores that are underperforming. Let's look at why. Was there more theft than usual? Was a popular product just not selling? Was there employee turnover or supply chain issues? And so the line of business, which really understands the impact of those elements, can do the exploration on their own. Having the skill set is another of these capabilities, and we see that the best in class in particular are turning to their own current employees and trying to nurture and develop them rather than seeking necessarily external help. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Right now, the demand for skilled big data analysts is much higher than the current supply. And it can be very pricey and difficult to headhunt these people and lure them into your organization. And so instead, they're taking a practical approach and finding your power users, your best and brightest, the people who understand your company and your operations, and training them up in the skills they need, rather than necessarily doing a long, convoluted external search. And finally, the best-in-class companies are more likely to keep their eye on the technology market and see how things are developing. And this is particularly important when it comes to big data, because the technologies are developing so quickly and so rapidly. There's a lot of interesting stuff that's happening, grabbing Twitter feeds or social media information and seeing the trends and customer sentiment when it comes around brands and products, Hadoop and handling unstructured data and distributed computing, or interesting visualization and collaboration tools. It's developing rapidly, so having somebody keep their finger on the pulse of that market will help companies understand when a technology is developed to the point where it could really help your organization. And if you find that out faster than your competitors, it puts you at an advantage. So finally, I want to end on that value note, why big data is important and how it's really driving extra revenue. And so we look at those best-in-class companies, the ones that are meeting their data pressures, have more likely to have in-memory tools in the background of organizational and management support. All of this trickles down to the customer. They're retaining more customers, 14% higher customer retention rate than laggards in the last year. So their current clients aren't leaving and taking their dollars elsewhere. And when that happens, well, your sales team is more likely to meet their quota. 13% improvement in the last year. This means, product sales are up. This means revenue's up. This means companies are happy. And this is all because customers are more satisfied with the goods and products these best-in-class companies are delivering. The best-in-class companies understand the market demands. They understand the particular needs of their customers. They understand how they can tweak their own products and operations to best meet that demand, and they do it faster than their competitors. And that's what's driving the value across the board. So I hope these data points were useful. I encourage you, if you have any questions at the moment, to use the Q&A panel in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Gagan and I will be talking to these questions at the end of the presentation, but also feel free to contact Aberdeen directly through our website or the email address listed for further information or other reports and research in this area. And so with that, I'd like to pass it on to our second speaker, Gagan, who will talk a little bit about Terracotta and some practical use cases for in-memory computing.
Thank you, Nathaniel, and thanks everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'll be talking about how in-memory solutions can solve big data challenges. So we heard Nathaniel talk about the 4V challenges of big data, and the question comes, why do we have these challenges? So there are two parts to the question here. The first part is, why do we have these challenges? The second part is, what can we do about these challenges? So let's take the first part. We have these challenges because the business has some new requirements. With data growth, they have identified a few new requirements to analyze that data and make the maximum use of all that new data. The second part, which is a bigger challenge here, is the traditional data management systems were not designed to handle the 4V challenges of big data. They were not designed to process terabytes or petabytes of data. They were not designed to handle hundreds of thousands of transactions in real time every second. And they were not designed to process unstructured and structured and semi-structured information all at the same time. And they were not designed to extract value from all these different formats. Now, all this is not just a technology challenge. It's also a big business challenge. Because in most cases, business does not even know what insights they're missing because they're unable to process all the data, or how they could even grow their revenue further if they could process their transactions a little bit faster. So this, in some ways, is a problem of the unknown unknowns. The business does not know what they're missing because they're unable to analyze all the data. So in this environment, it's really critical to find the right tools that can help the big data challenges associated with these 4Vs. The good news is that big data is no longer a science project. What we have seen is significant progress in the big data space in the last few months. And what we have seen is that businesses have identified big data as one of their top priorities. They understand the business opportunity associated with big data. And just a few months back, big data was considered mere hype or a buzzword. But these days, what we are seeing is it's become more of a business imperative for businesses. Businesses understand the need to solve the big data problem to better understand their customers, unlock new revenue streams, and to overtake their competition. Businesses, especially the Fortune 500, they're already getting real returns from big data. Now, in-memory has a great role to play in all this. A few years back, what we saw was that memory was too expensive, and it was not possible to build a solution around keeping large sets of data in memory. But things have changed in recent times. Not only has the price of RAM dropped drastically in the last few years, but with the explosion in data, new solutions are coming out that encourage large data sets to be maintained completely in memory. Just to give you an idea of how cheap RAM has become in recent times, I looked up the price for a server with half a terabyte of RAM, and it costed less than $25,000. Now, just about a year back, that server was over $50,000. So that's just amazing that in just about 12 months' time, the price has dropped over 100%. With the rise of in-memory, what we are also seeing is a drastic shift in the way the applications are architected. In the past, what we saw was most of the data was stored in the database and only a small amount of data was kept in memory. These days, what we are seeing is that the bulk of the data can be maintained in memory and only a small set can be put in database. As a result, what we are seeing is that the application response times have dropped drastically from milliseconds to microseconds. Back in 2010, when we were building our in-memory product, we were around about half a terabyte of data in memory, and we thought that there won't be any customers who would need to put more than half a terabyte in memory. But we were quickly proven wrong when in 2011, a few customers approached us and they wanted to put multiple terabytes of data in memory. Now, these days, it's very normal for customers to ask for an in-memory product that can support multiple terabytes. They ideally want to put close to 100% of their data in memory. What they also want is a guarantee that the data in memory is safe, it's persistent, it's highly available, it has predictable latency, and it can scale without any performance degradation, even if we scale to hundreds of terabytes of data. So all this activity in the big data space and the in-memory space played a big role in the creation of a flagship product called BigMemory. At a high level, what BigMemory does, it allows large data sets from different sources to be maintained in memory, hence the name BigMemory. Now, BigMemory is a unique product in the in-memory space. Most in-memory products allow you to maintain large data sets in memory, but you see an impact on the performance front. Or they can keep small data sets and support microsecond performance. With BigMemory, you can maintain terabytes of data in memory without impacting performance. What we guarantee is predictable latency in microseconds or low milliseconds. And that is something that's really unique. Nobody else does this. What we do is big data, extremely fast, with consistent low latency and high availability. BigMemory delivers scale and speed. So let's talk about scale first. When we talk about scale, as I mentioned, we can maintain terabytes of data in memory with no performance degradation. BigMemory allows you to scale in two different ways. You can either scale up, which means you can store as much data as your hardware can hold in memory by maximizing the use of RAM on your servers, or you can scale out, which means you can add more servers as needed to increase capacity and throughput for your application. There are no limits. If you need 100 gigs, you can set up your environment to use 100 gigs. If you need 100 terabytes, you can set up your environment to use 100 terabytes. Speed, BigMemory supports microsecond access. The way the application is structured, there is a client side and a server side. So if you're on the client side, you're guaranteed microsecond access to your in-memory data. If you're on the server side, you get low millisecond access to your data, which is 2 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds. So this applies to all the operations that you can do on the objects in memory, whether it's read, write, or search functionality. This applies to whether you have 100 gigabytes of data in memory or you have terabytes of data in memory. Apart from scale and speed, BigMemory also offers simplicity. BigMemory makes it really easy to deploy the application without significant customizations to your existing application. If you're already using EHCache, which a large number of customers are using EHCache, because EHCache has been an open source product for the last several years, and we already have over 2 million developers. I guess it's close to 2.5 million developers who have been using EHCache for about last 10 years. So if you are already using EHCache, to enable BigMemory, all you need is 2 lines of configuration change, and you're ready to use BigMemory. To enable BigMemory, you require no database changes. It works with your existing data store. It doesn't require any special skills. Anybody with knowledge of Java can start using BigMemory. It works with all mainstream development frameworks. It comes prepackaged with Spring. works with all the leading app server containers, doesn't require any specialized hardware. So you can use any commodity server you have, whether it has 32 gigs of RAM or 1 terabyte of RAM or 2 terabyte of RAM, doesn't make any difference. We can use any commodity server. BigMemory also comes with a management console to allow you to monitor your objects in memory and to see how in-memory is performing in your production environment. This management console also allows you to easily integrate with your existing monitoring environment so you can monitor everything from a single place. Without BigMemory, your application will not be able to maximize the use of RAM on the server. As we all know, with Java, we have a challenge where if we have a large heap size, we run into garbage collection pauses. These garbage collection pauses result in impacting the customer experience. Hence, it's important to have something like BigMemory to not only maximize the use of RAM on your server, but to avoid any impact to customer experience. BigMemory benefits all areas of the enterprise. We are helping our customers solve problems that they've been struggling with for the last several years because this Java challenge has existed pretty much since the day Java came out back in '95. For the applications in your enterprise environment, BigMemory allows you to perform at any scale. It allows you to process hundreds of thousands of transactions every second. It allows your applications to scale to terabytes of data. It allows your applications to increase the response rate. So they can respond in short period of time. They can process large number of transactions. In the beginning, we talked about the challenges with your traditional data management systems. So if you have an old application that's unable to scale, unable to process large amounts of data, by adding BigMemory, you can easily scale that application and process large amounts of data. For your IT team, you make the IT environment more simple and predictable. They don't have to worry about setting up additional servers as the need for more data grows. They don't have to worry about tuning the application. A lot of customers that are using BigMemory have reduced their performance test cycles because the application is able to easily meet SLAs without any challenges. They're able to maximize the use of sheet memory. A lot of times what we see is a customer is using an application and it already is running on a server with 32 gigs of RAM, but because of the Java limitation, they are only able to use 6 gig heap size or 8 gig heap size. After deploying BigMemory, they are able to utilize the full 32 gig RAM on the server. For the business, after deploying BigMemory, they are able to really stop worrying about the data growth and focus on how they can grow their business, how they can beat the competition, how they can create more innovative products, and how they can get more insights from the data that already exists in their environment. So let's look at some use cases associated with BigMemory to talk about some of the big challenges that BigMemory has solved. The first use case is for a major credit card company. This was for their risk environment. The big challenge they had was that they were not able to analyze their fraud transactions fast enough. It was taking them about 45 minutes to process the fraud transactions. As a result, they were losing a lot of money, and they were not able to catch fraud on time. What we did, we deployed BigMemory to support terabytes of data in real time in a fraud environment. After deploying BigMemory, they were able to process the fraud transactions in under 4 seconds. So it came down from 45 minutes to under 4 seconds. We also were able to deploy the full application within 8 weeks. And this was 8 weeks just before one of the busiest shopping seasons in the US, which is Black Friday. And what we saw was the application was stable during the Black Friday shopping season, and they did not run into any issues. The other great thing was, in the past, they were only able to look at 2 days worth of transactions for detecting fraud to do trend analysis. But after deploying BigMemory, they were able to look at 2 months worth of transactions in under 4 seconds. So not only the transaction response time went down drastically, but they were able to process more data in a lot less time. And as a result, they were able to save hundreds of millions of dollars within a very short time frame. The next use case is for a traffic information system. This is for a navigation services provider. This company is in the business of providing real-time traffic information to their global customer base. And they were running into a challenge because they were unable to read and process volumes of data coming from multiple sources. So they were getting data from satellites, they were getting data from the sensors, they were getting data from the weather reports. So there were multiple sources. They had to process all that data in real time and come up with accurate and real-time traffic information and send it to their customers. So they had this big challenge. What we did, we put about 200 gigs of data, which is relatively small now for us. We put 200 gigs of data in BigMemory and combined all these data sets in BigMemory, and it allowed them to process all these data sets instantly in real time, and it enabled them to deliver traffic information to their global customer base in real time. As a result, the overall system stability and availability went up. They were not able to worry, they stopped worrying about their data growth in their environment, and for the first time, they were really focused on growing their business and how to make it more profitable. Let's look at another use case out here. This use case is for our telecommunications leader. This is a global telecom company, and their big challenge was around customer service and billing. They had multiple systems for customer service, and they were aggregating the customer record from these multiple systems, and it used to take about 30 seconds to aggregate the customer record and service the customer. So a lot of times, we call customer service for a phone company or cable company, and we hear, the computers are running slow. So this was a very similar environment where computers are pretty much running slow every day, just not that one day when you call. And customers were struggling. Customer service department was also struggling because the call time to resolve a customer's issue was going up, the costs were going up, but the quality of customer service was going down. So they had big challenges in their environment. They wanted to, first of all, improve customer service. They wanted to increase more customers on the web and mobile platform, and they also wanted to bring down the costs of their call center operations. So what we did for them is we deployed BigMemory with about 10 terabytes of data, allowed them to keep all that data in memory by aggregating their customer records from different systems. This reduced the time for pulling up a customer record from 30 seconds to 3 milliseconds. So that was a drastic reduction in how much time it took to pull up the customer record. As a result, their support costs went down from $15 to 50 cents per transaction. They were able to cut down the cost for their call center. They were able to reduce the number of servers used in their call center environment. They were also able to shift more customers to the web and mobile interface because now they were able to create the customer records in a lot shorter time frame. So customers could use self-service features and could easily access their customer records from the web and mobile environments. And as a result, they were able to grow in double digits. And they, in fact, recently contacted us, and they want to increase the footprint of BigMemory by buying up more terabytes. So they realized how beneficial this has been for them, and they want to deploy it in other applications. To wrap up, I would say with BigMemory, you don't have to choose between defense and offense. You can manage your current needs infinitely better if you start using BigMemory. So whether it's meeting your SLAs, managing your risk, or better serving your customers, you can also at the same time look at outpacing your competition, being more innovative and different, and figuring out how you can grow your revenue even further. Once you have your big data challenges resolved, you can stop worrying about them and really start focusing on your business. You can really be innovative and focus on growing your revenue and beating your competition. The question is, are you ready to take the leap with BigMemory? That concludes the presentation. I'll pass it back to the moderator for Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Gagan. That's wonderful. Nathaniel, I'm going to ask you the first question here. How quickly is the marketing adopting in-memory?
That's a good question. In one of the previous slides, we saw that even the best-in-class companies don't have complete adoption of in-memory. 38% of them did. 0% of the laggards, as I mentioned. So, the overall average number, it's about a quarter of the companies surveyed in this study, 23% thereabouts. In-memory as a concept has been around in a long time, but there's been some problems with handling it, making sure that, if you lose power, you're not going to lose the data, making sure it's, enterprise-ready, highly available, fail-safe, stuff like that. And so it's still a new concept in terms of being rolled into products and being marketed as its own solution. I will say that while only about 23% of the companies currently have it, there's a lot of interest in this space. We also asked companies if you were planning to invest in an in-memory solution in the next 2 years, and if everyone who indicated that they plan to invest actually goes through on this initiative, the adoption rate will almost triple, and it'll get to around 68-70% adoption in the next 2 years. So that's a good indication of the market overall interest. So low but growing adoption right now, but rapid increase in the next couple of years.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. And Gagan, how long does it take to deploy BigMemory?
Great question. So out-of-the-box software can be deployed within a few hours, but most of our end-to-end implementations take between 8 to 10 weeks. As I mentioned, the major credit card company use case, we were able to deploy BigMemory within 8 weeks. So usually the implementations don't take longer than 8 to 10 weeks.
Great. Thank you. And also, what other big data technologies are making a big impact? Nathaniel, perhaps that's good film for you.
Sure. We didn't really, or at least I didn't really talk too much about unstructured data in my presentation. That's one of the major V's of big data, the variety aspect. But it's really important to consider when you're developing a big data initiative, what types of unstructured data is valuable to your organization, and then how are you going to store and manage it? For some companies, that internet-generated content, Twitter feeds, social media, et cetera, is really important. For others, physical or digital versions of physical documents are very important. Mortgages, loan applications, insurance claims, et cetera. That's unstructured. For others, marketing collateral, rich media, audio files, video files, images, et cetera, you got to manage that. So unstructured data stores, I briefly mentioned Hadoop as a very flexible data storage format. NoSQL databases are getting very popular right now. Some way to store and manage this data effectively and find it is one of the major big data technologies to keep an eye on. And then a kind of final end piece to it, how it's being consumed, visualization technologies. And this is more advanced than just a pretty pie chart or some bar charts that you can kind of scroll up and down. But when you're talking about big data at incredible scale, it's impossible to scroll through a million rows on an Excel spreadsheet and get anything valuable from that. You need a way to digest it in the way the human mind can comprehend, and the best way to do that is visualization, ways that you can dynamically change how the data is presented, heat maps and scatter plots, and however the data is best represented, can you manipulate it and show it and share it in that fashion? And so being able to have visualization tools on top of whatever big data program you have is very important. Those, unstructured data, visualization are the other two areas I'd look at.
Great. Thanks so much, Nathaniel. Gagan, what is the largest data set that you have handled?
The largest data set we have handled is close to 15 terabytes in production. So we have multiple customers running multiple terabytes in production, but the largest one is close to 15 terabytes. We've had multiple requests this year already from customers that want to grow to 25 terabytes or 30 terabytes.
Great, thank you so much. Also, Gagan, do you need to customize our? This user is, do we need to customize our existing applications to deploy BigMemory?
So it depends on if you're already using cache, you can start using BigMemory with just 2 lines of configuration change, which means you don't need to customize your applications. If you're not using cache, you can start using BigMemory by making minor changes to your applications. Most people replace some of the selects and insert statements they have in their applications with the cache.put and cache.get statements to get started. And as I said, these changes don't take a long time, and that's why we are able to deploy a BigMemory application within 8 to 10 weeks.
Again, thank you very much. Nathaniel, what other big data technologies are making a big impact?
I think we already covered that one.
Okay, great, thanks. And let's ask this one. I'll ask Gagan. Why is BigMemory different or better than any other in-memory products?
Yeah, great question. There's several reasons why BigMemory is better. First of all, in our experience, nobody else can scale to multiple terabytes of data. Even if they are able to get to it, by some means, they're not able to maintain the performance at that level. So BigMemory is the only product out there that can guarantee you microsecond level performance even at multiple terabytes. Secondly, BigMemory comes with several features that do not exist in other in-memory products. Firstly, like the search functionality is something that's fairly unique to BigMemory. Other products don't implement search the same way. We also have a management console, as I mentioned during my presentation, that allows you to easily monitor the application. The deployment time frame for BigMemory is significantly less compared to the other products in the in-memory space. Also, given the large developer community around BigMemory, it's become a lot easier to configure your applications to start using BigMemory. And these are a bunch of reasons why BigMemory is different from the other in-memory products out there.
Great, thank you. Also, another question here for you. How do you manage data locking issues when a thread is trying to update and another thread is trying to access the data? Does it impact the access times?
Great question. There are several different ways locking is managed within BigMemory. If you are set up with an eventual consistency mode, which means you don't need to worry about your underlying database to get updated once your cache gets updated, your in-memory object gets updated, then you don't need to worry about locking. In the scenario where you're set up with strong consistency, BigMemory internally takes care of locking, and there is no impact on performance. We still guarantee the same microsecond and millisecond performance. The minimal impact is handled internally. We also offer explicit locking. So in some unique circumstances, if you need to use explicit locking for some reason, we can enable that. And depending on your use case, there might be some impacts to performance, how you implement that explicit locking feature.
Wonderful, thank you. Nathaniel, in making the case to others, to the senior management, what other technology costs are involved in moving to BigMemory, such as the need to upgrade BI and other applications?
It's always hard to get make a case to senior management. So maybe Gagan can talk to a BigMemory solution specifically after me. But in general, I talked a little bit about visualization, but addressing that consumption layer. A lot of times existing BI applications are very easily integrated into the kind of underlying foundation of in-memory. Sometimes they need tweaking. Sometimes if you're making the move wholesale from more manual efforts or spreadsheets or manual reporting to in-memory, addressing some kind of BI interface on top is very important to consider. However, I will say sometimes it enables you to be a little bit more tactical in what senior management division you're trying to get approval from. Aberdeen has been following a trend in specific departments or business units using their own discretionary budget, if the price point's right, to implement a big data in-memory BI solution just for their unit without necessarily going through upper corporate management and IT specifically. If the price point's right, again, you can often tactically invest in a very kind of high-powered, maybe not quite terabyte scale, but multiple gigabytes with an interface layer on top of it, and use it for your marketing or your sales organization, and get some really strong improvements and wins in that department alone. And oftentimes, a CMO or a senior sales exec can write off that without necessarily going through additional channels. And once you start, showing wins there, you can kind of roll out to other business units, bring them in, preach the good news, so to speak. But being tactical about what senior management you want to make the case for can make all the difference.
So in my experience, what I've seen is there are two kinds of customers who are already using EHCache and customers who are not using EHCache. For customers who are already using EHCache, all they need to do is buy the additional hardware required to run BigMemory, and they can just quickly configure BigMemory on their EHCache applications, and they can start using BigMemory. So there is no additional cost required to upgrade VI or any other application. It's fairly straightforward. In most cases, we are able to find that hardware internally. In some cases, we have to go out and procure the hardware. So that's fairly quick. Instances where we run into customers that are not using EHCache, there are some costs involved in making minor customizations to their existing applications to start using BigMemory, and then the additional hardware costs involved for setting up BigMemory. As I mentioned during my presentation, we don't need any specialized hardware for running BigMemory. Any commodity server works. So if you already have commodity servers, some extra servers sitting in a data center or idle servers, those can be used. In a lot of scenarios, what happens is because you're using BigMemory, we are maximizing the use of RAM on our servers. We're able to reduce the number of Java nodes running in your environment. If you reduce the number of Java nodes, you're able to free up some physical servers. And the same physical servers can be used for running the BigMemory application. So the additional costs are really minimal when you're deploying BigMemory and you're trying to build a case for senior management. The other part is to build a business case around showing ROI for deploying something like BigMemory. And a lot of customers that I've worked with, they are able to show the ROI within a few months. In fact, one customer, the major credit card company that I was talking about, they were able to get their return on investment within 24 hours because they saved so many dollars within that 24-hour period that the ROI was real quick. But in most cases, you're able to build a business case that shows ROI within a couple of months.
Thank you. And this question is a bit specific, but perhaps you could shed some light on it, or we can always get back to the user following. But the user is asking, what's the cost leverage range, et cetera, for a 4 terabyte system?
So there are a lot of factors that go into determining the cost for a system. We need to look at the architecture. We need to look at the number of Java nodes. We need to look at how the memory is used, how much will be on the client side out of this 4 terabyte, how much will be on the server side. So it's difficult to share, over the phone how much it would cost. I think the best option is to send an email to our contact details listed here on the slide, info@terracotta.org. And we'll be able to discuss your use case in detail and then figure out the cost estimate.
Great, thank you. And Nathaniel, can you share any other best practices or trends for managing big data?
Sure. I probably could talk another 3 hours about this, but in very brief, broad strokes, we talked about value, and I think identifying what value you want from the Big Data Initiative should happen before you take any practical steps. I've seen a lot of companies that kind of plunged into big data and are storing, terabytes and terabytes of information, and they have no idea what they want to do with it. And so they have all the costs associated with big data, but none of the value. So find the business need or the business process that you want to improve, and then build your solution for that, build your underlying structure for that. And that'll identify the stakeholders, the goals, the budget, all that jazz, because if you don't identify that need, it's really hard to determine if the Big Data Initiative is a success or not and determine ROI. So find the value in the business need first. And then while a lot of hype around big data involves unstructured, and absolutely unstructured has tons of value, there's lots of cool opportunities, tackle your structured data, your historical transactional, your master records first. I think it was 92% of organizations surveyed said that their structured information was absolutely critical to their big data initiative. And it makes sense. It forms the kind of core information that you then seek other sources to supplement and enhance and enrich. But manage that information first. Make sure it's high quality, make sure it's reliable, and you're going to have a better overall data management and big data initiative as a result. So find the value and manage your structured information first.
Great. Sounded like great advice. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. And our last question of the webinar here, I will throw it over to Gagan. Gagan, this user rates, can we get a trial version to experiment with before buying it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to the website, terracotta.org, and you can download a trial version. The trial version is good for 30 days, and you can try it out before you buy.
Oh, great answer. All right. Thank you very much. This does bring us to the conclusion of the webinar. A copy of the slides will be emailed to all the attendees. I'd like to thank our presenters, Nathaniel Rowe and Gagan Mehra, for their research, insights, and recommendations. I'd also like to thank our participants for their interest and their participation. And, of course, thank you to our sponsor, Terracotta, for making this webinar possible. I hope you all found it beneficial, and we wish you the best wherever you may be.